I want to jump in on the dunking, as Anna Kasparian would call it. I know we're not on their radar, but shout out to the Young Turks. I love them. And I think it shows. But so, Biden is a failure at politics, he's a failure at policy, and he also has no real political identity. And I think it's really important to address that. And you started doing a really good job of that, okay? Let's start with policy, because you've been, hammering it down so well already. People right now, the Democratic base is not really a fan of racism. Some people would even say, some often wrongly, that Democrats are too focused on race, right? And too focused on racial justice. Biden is not that guy. He may talk about solidarity with the black community, but that's just not true, and it shows in every single ounce of his policy. As you talked about, he was the chief architect of the 1994 crime bill. That was responsible for mass incarceration, particularly of black and Latinos, often males, as the violent crime rate was actually decreasing. He was, we played clips of it on the show, where he's on the Senate floor talking about the fact that these are uncaring, unempathetic human beings raised without fathers, who are incapable of integrating into our society and need to be locked up because it's kill or be killed, and if Senate doesn't kill them, they will kill, Senate, right? So let's talk about that, right? That's absolutely abhorrent and just not true. He also stated that he literally did not care if rehabilitation was not the goal of these prison facilities. And in doing so, he not only incentivized states and corporations to, imprison more people, once again, usually blacks and Latinos, but he also signed away the keys to take prisons from being state entities to being private entities. And so, once again, they were even further incentivized to artificially create demand for prisons, which is absolutely inhumane on every level. As you mentioned, he rose to prominence in the 70s as being the only Democrat to virulently oppose school integration and busing. He obstructed very heavily against Anita Hill and offered a very, very insincere apology only days before he decided to announce his presidential bid. He floated Stacey Abrams' name without her consent as a potential vice presidential candidate before even really getting into his primary, simply because he wanted to, show that he was hip and with it and with the black female vote, despite the fact that women feel very uncomfortable around Joe Biden for numerous reasons.
I feel uncomfortable around Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
If I were to be next to him. But, he just gives me... I see him online, and, just anything he does, should freak you out, right?
Yeah.
This dude is just creepy.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that, right? And then let's get on to, and of course, as you already talked about the Hyde Amendment, but I just want to go into a little bit more detail for people who may still not be aware of what it is. The Hyde Amendment basically prevented federal money from going to fund abortions due to people's religious abstentions and opposition to it, right? Which may, on principle, sound good to some people, but in practice, what that did was make it difficult for low-income, often minority women, oftentimes in places like the South, to receive abortions when it is necessary. And, that's hugely problematic. Biden just flip-flopped on it and now is opposing the Hyde Amendment after 2 days of pressure, which gets to something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this rant. But before that, I want to go on to the politics. We've talked about the policy, now the politics. Biden knows that in terms of policy, he is far and away from the American people and especially the Democratic primary base. And so he's been running his campaign as if he's already an incumbent. Even more hands-off than Hillary Clinton, which is terrible. And so what that means is he hasn't been going on a big speaking tour. He hasn't been visiting as many states as he should. He hasn't been paying as much attention to Iowa as he should. He did not attend the Democratic National Committee. Instead, he's just been courting these big corporate donors at these very expensive, private fundraisers, at the homes of people like the head lobbyist for Comcast, right? And so he knows that because the more he speaks, the worse he does in the polls. For example, he's had to do a lot of damage control lately about the Hyde Amendment, and he's been losing support to Elizabeth Warren as a result. And so the cracks are really starting to show. He's not a good politician. He's not a good campaigner. He's low energy. He has no clear political identity, which is a big reason why people are abandoning him. He had a lot of support and a lot of hype because he's connected forever to Barack Obama, due to the fact that he was his vice president, and Barack Obama is still pretty popular. But when you look at Biden as a man, as the same person who had to leave, the 97 election, and the 2008 election due to gas and controversies and scandal, you realize that Biden is not equipped to be president, and you realize that he has no real reason to be president beyond ego. If you look at his launch video, he claims that he was incentivized to run for president because Donald Trump essentially gave his verbal pardon, his spiritual pardon, to the Nazis and neo-Nazis who were present at Charlottesville and were responsible for the death of an innocent woman. I'm sorry, that's bullshit. Okay? He has stated time and time again that he supports working with people like Mitch McConnell, who's been all too happy to help Trump obstruct, right? Like Paul Ryan, who's been all too happy to help Trump obstruct, claiming that they will meet in the center, and even though they completely screwed Obama out of any meaningful policy legacy, they would just work with Biden because he's got that that sapase or whatever? That je ne sais quoi, about him to just get people to come together and vote in the middle. But what you don't know is behind his back, he's selling you out. He supported NAFTA, he supported TTP, he opposed Elizabeth Warren when she wanted a Consumer Protection Bureau. He supported George Bush in his efforts to make it harder, his successful efforts to make it harder for American families to declare bankruptcies, while it's all too easy for corporations to do so. And he, behind our back, has told corporate donors and the 1%ers who support his campaign. By the way, he's even tried to court Trump donors, which is just embarrassing of any Democrat. He said, hey, fundamentally nothing will change. And that is Biden. He has no political ideology besides keeping things the same. And considering the era that we're in, that is the absolute essence of neoliberalism, which is failing. I thought Hillary Clinton would have been a lesson to all of us. But the fact that there are still people supporting Biden says that, A, the people who do support him are unfortunately ignorant of his politics and his policy, and as he speaks more, they're becoming more aware of it, which is why they're abandoning him. And B, the Democratic establishment is so desperate to get someone who will keep things the same, because they want things to remain static so that donors will continue being placated, so that taxes will continue being low for the people who do not actually need tax cuts. Biden should be running in the Republican primary. All he cares about is getting back to business as usual decorum, where everyone's nice and civil, but they're doing the same things, the same screwing of the middle and working class and working poor behind their backs. The same racism, the same corporate exploitation. If you're a Democrat, if you're a true Democrat, you care about racism, you care about dealing with inequality, you care about fighting fascism, and you care about getting things done for real, don't support Biden.